We're back with another episode with the You Can't Be Serious podcast. Today, we have a very special guest on the show. He works for OddsSharks. Am I correct?
OddsShark, that is correct, my man.
Shark. So my question for you, and I'm going to ask Jared as well, and I'm going to answer as well. So I just want to know, how did you get started into sports gambling? Like, what made you say, okay, this is something I'm going to try, and let's go?
Sure. All right, so I'll go first. How I started was just simply just kind of like, I didn't understand spreads and totals. Like, people would explain that kind of stuff to me when I was like, say like 10 to 12 years ago. And I just didn't understand it. Like, cause I would be constantly doing like, March Madness brackets, or, just picking at the beginning of the year, like the standings or whatever else in the NBA, and just kind of the black and white style of bet of money lines. And that's kind of what I was betting on. And then in my area in Canada, they only allowed single game betting. I don't know if you guys saw this. They just recently announced a law where now you can actually do single game betting. Like, a lot of what was offered to us were these like provincial or just these like state run style of gambling services where you had to only bet parlays. You could only bet. So what I was doing is I was betting with my buddies, like gentlemen bets, being like, hey man, I bet you $20 Phoenix wins tonight or something like that. So that, you have that kind of experience. So I went to school for journalism. One of the guys who who ran OddsShark at the time, he's one of my best friends, is Joe Osborne. So we met through through college, kept in touch, still hung out, shot the shit, whatever else. And then he started working at OddsShark because they were looking for content creators. And he knew that I bet and everything else, but just at the same time, didn't know much about the offshore online books like that we use today. And he was kind of introducing it to me, and I was showing him like kind of the things that I was doing from a betting standpoint. And he's like, man, if you take this over here and you actually use the offshore stuff, you might be able to actually put this into, like, you could actually make this work from a betting standpoint. And he knew that I could write. So when a job came open for it, this would be October of 2017, he just said, hey man, like, there's a job open now. I know you do marketing and sales, but this is the way to go. And so he got me on, and I've been there ever since. And I've just been slowly getting better at betting, but I've been probably betting now. So I'm a little bit older than probably you guys. I'm 36. So I've been betting now probably since my mid 20s, like 24, 25.
So first, shout out to Mr. Osborne for giving you that opportunity. Does Mr. Osborne, he also bet some things like that?
Oh yeah, no, Joe Osborne is a social gambling comet right now, man. I don't know how he does it. Like, so like I got like, I think like 22,000 followers, and I've been grinding. They're trying to just build this up. Like, he has been grinding the same amount of time. He's got 55,000 followers just because that's his type of personality. Like, he's over the top. He's, screaming into the camera, like, and I mean, it works for him. And not only that, but just, I can't do that style of personality. Plus he's really good at what he does. And he looks up and finds really interesting angles and trends and whatnot. So being good friends with him. So a lot of the time, what I would tell people if they want to get into the industry, if you want to be like kind of in my role where you're creating content, you're writing, you're doing videos, and then doing bets as well. Journalism and writing, like practice like that, is one of the best ways to do it. And like how you're doing it now of just creating content and being able to kind of shoot some videos and shoot the shit and talking about games like who's better, Chris Paul or Zach LaVine? Are the Brooklyn Nets going to win the East? That kind of stuff like that you guys have been doing. So that's a good way to do it. And then also, if you're going to be doing picks, which I do sometimes, but again, a lot of people, that's kind of how they think. That's all they think, that's my job. And that's not the job at all. Like, I'm a writer, but I also do picks based on the research and knowledge that I have. So a lot of the time people will just start by making picks, but they don't do any content with it. They don't show their face. They're just behind this random emoji. You know what I mean? That's just, you don't even know who the person is. Why would I trust you to do a pick? You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So that's the main thing, is like transparency. It's who you know. Try to be nice to everybody you've ever met in the industry, because you never know when somebody's going to be put in a position of power, and they could be like, hey man, I remember dealing with you. You were a cool cat. I'm gonna hire you, kind of thing, right? So that's kind of, without ranting for too long, I think I'm probably going about 10 minutes. That's my background and how I got here.
Okay, perfect. So Jared, I'm asking you now, how did you get into sports gambling?
Honestly, you started that on Twitter like a year and a half ago. And he was like, I was seeing how much money he was making. I was like, it's like free money, just watching sports. And I just guess which team I think is going to win. And I think I have a high percentage of guessing. why not put some money on it, you know? So, but I've been inconsistent. I've been on and off really. But honestly, I got back into it probably in December again, trying to just get back into the grind of things. I really didn't bet during the bubble. I didn't think that was like, I felt like there was no real type of.
So you think the bubble was fake basketball?
Advantage, really, because it's like, you said what?
I hear you, man. I hear you. Even like, not to cut you off, but I had a lot of difficulty betting the bubble just during like the play-in games. Like once we got to the playoffs, it's a little bit of a different story because you could just ride one team. Like for example, Miami, like you could just take them every game money line and pretty much be up tons of money. But yeah, during the like play-in games, it was so difficult. So yeah, I can understand why you didn't bet a lot during the bubble.
I mean, yeah.
So
starting to like to it.
So Jerry, you said a year and a half ago you thought it was just like free money. So would you say now it's not as free as you thought it was?
Yeah, it hit. I got hit a couple of times. Like, do I even want to keep doing this? But it's fun though, because I've been up a lot of times too. So it's like I've been up more than I've been down. So, but them downs hurt. If that makes sense.
Oh, I hear you, man. And I think Jerry, the main thing too is a lot of sports bettors out there is sometimes they don't like you do, but they don't have the right temperament, right? Like you lose. And it's woe is me, it's the end of the world. I'm never gonna win again. Blah 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 blah.
Right.
It's like, guys, like it's one day. Like don't bet beyond your means. Don't be betting your rent money. Like don't be betting, like, like the bill money and stuff like that. Like bet what you can afford. And if you lose, it's okay. It's one day. We're gonna get back on the saddle tomorrow. And also, main thing I would say is don't put too many bets out there. That's the other thing too, especially with the NBA this year. Just because of no crowds and the way the travel is and the way that they're doing back-to-back slates sometimes, just do like one or two games. Like don't try to like bet every game on the board because again, that's more often than not, especially in your position where you're kind of betting on gut. If you're betting on gut, just go with the gut and go with the ones that you like. Don't look at a random game between Oklahoma and Dallas and you haven't looked at either of the teams in like the last 3 weeks and you're just like, well, I like Luka. I'm going to bet on Luka. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that would probably be difficult to do.
Mr. G, would you agree with this? I tell people who ask me all the time that try to get into sports betting or that ask me for advice or whatever. The first thing I tell everybody, I probably didn't do this at first, but as more time went on and as more as I had an understanding of gambling, things like that, I tell people all the time, if you do not want to lose, don't gamble because you're gonna lose. Like it's inevitable. Like you're gonna lose. Like so, if you don't want to lose at all, just don't even get into this because you can lose today.
And Harold, you said the same. You said it right there. Like you will. Like let's say you take 100 bets, the best bettors, even if it's at -110 odds for a spread, the best bettors are only hitting 56 out of 100 times. Like that's just the way it is. Like you have to hit 52 to actually make money. Normally people are around like 54, 55 over a larger sample size. 56% is kind of like the goal, like what people want to hit. Now I'm a little bit different because I bet in underdog money lines all the time. So I have a little bit more margin for error. I could probably hit like 30 to 40% of my bets and still be able to make out a profit because I'm betting shit at like plus 250, plus 200, that kind of stuff. The -110s, man, that's where it gets you because the books are inviting you to take these -110s because they're the leans that they believe what it is. They believe that the Jazz are going to win by 5.5 points. You know what I mean? Like not necessarily even, and then they end up losing by or only winning by 4 or something like that. Because when the Jazz are playing in the fourth quarter and they're down by 4, they're not thinking to themselves, I got to get to 6 points so I can get Harold his money. Like, you know what I mean? They're thinking, how do I win this game? You know what I mean? And when you're depending on that kind of stuff, it drives me crazy. Whereas, you know what they are thinking of? I got to win this game. That's why money line bets for me are probably my main source of betting, just as far as like market is concerned, because of that.
So, Mr. G, I heard you say that the strategy you use is you bet a lot of underdog money lines. So even if your percentage is lower, because you're betting on underdog money lines, your profit will be more than somebody who's just betting on a favorite, like you said, -110 odds.
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
So tip, like, how did you get to that strategy?
So I'm a little bit lucky in a sense because where I work with OddsShark, I have availability for every single betting record you could think of for NBA from 1994 and onward. So I could basically put in a request and say, hey, what's the overall money? Like if I took every money line for $100, what would it pay me? kind of thing. And my dad, I'll send that to my data team, and they send me the request, and they send it to me. Or you can go on some other sites. Some other sites have it too, like Killer Sports and, you know, other places that you could find those kind of trends and records and profits. But if I got people working for me, I might as well just send them the request. So, but I guess what I'm getting at is that that's how I was able to get that information. And then it was showing me, okay, if I just don't do anything, like I don't even look at the games, I don't look at the matchups, I don't do anything, and I just bet the money line odds for the underdog before it closes, before the game tips off, I will make X amount of profit, because that's what basically so far the track record has said. Now, this is one of those trends that, as awesome as it's been for me over the last, like, because I've only really been doing it really hard myself, like over the last month. And I probably made, so if I'm betting $100 a game, I probably made about $850 in profit over a 30-day period. And even then, you're still having to bet probably 110 games in that stretch kind of thing. And a lot of people have that kind of patience to ride that out. They want the
Microwave
5-pick
society.
parlay for $1 that pays 10,000. You know what I mean? Like, nobody wants to invest any money. They just want to get the most amount of money as quickly as possible. And that's one of the things about sports betting, is a lot of people, they don't really understand that they got to look at it more like investments. They got to look at it more like stocks, in a sense of, how can I slowly increase this 401k or whatever else it is, you know, to get to a point where I'm profitable at the end of the year. Because the reality is that sports books and Vegas and whatever else, they're waiting on people like us to put parlays in, like of these massive, like $100 parlays that pay like 6 figures, that have such a low probability of hitting. And that's how they make their money a lot of the time, not on people like me who are just betting on money line dogs straight across the board. So, like, for example, last night there were 8 games that were all paying plus money. I went 4-4, but the thing is, I still made 2 units, because all I did was just put 1 unit on every single underdog on the money line. And because it went 4-4, and some of them were paying plus 150, like the Nets, they were playing plus 220 to beat the.
They had Nets. They had the Nets 6.5 point underdogs last night, man.
Ridiculous.
Damn.
So the fact that they had that, you know what I mean, that obviously saved my ass, so, you know, to be able to end up with profit. But that's the whole point that I'm trying to show people, is that in this such weird season where, you know, COVID, and you don't know who's going to play like about 20 minutes before tip, or, you know, or travel and all this BS that comes up, that happens with the NBA right now. And I mean, it's been going on for a few years with load management, but this year is even crazier. There is no tried and true strategy or model that I feel like anybody can reliably depend on and show you the edge and the results. Whereas underdogs is a very simple concept. It's so simple that even the most novice sports bettor should be able to understand what we need, what you have to do daily to get it. So that's kind of why I've been saying that I've been betting on money line dogs so much, because that's what's paying. Like, that, at the end of the day, like, I'm watching these people who, you know, they sell picks for NBA or whatever else, and they're only hitting 56%. They're sweating their ass off because, like, these games are just coming down to these final possessions. There's fucking shenanigans with the refs and everything else, man. Like, it drives me crazy to watch it. And I was just like, I'm sick of this stress. I'm sick of it. I don't have time for it. I got 2 little kids. I got a house, everything else. I don't have time for the stupid stress of these games, you know, of favorites trying to cover like 7 or 2 possessions of whatever the spread is. Right? So that's pretty much what the strategy, why it was born. And once I got the information from my data team, and it showed me that it was still making money over a course of the season, over 30 days, over 14 days, over 7 days, I was like, why am I even handicapping these games? Like, why am I even deep diving right now? I might as well just bet every underdog and I'd make this amount of money.
Gee, I think I'm gonna steal your strategy, man. And,
well, I think everybody is now, man. I think at the end of the day, because the thing is, like, again, it's not just you, Harold. It's not just you guys, man. Like, it's everybody that's just trying to find this edge in the NBA because of the way the season is, and they can't figure it out. And I can't still figure it out. And then I just found this very simple one that seems to be working. Now, here's the one thing that I would say about this strategy, because a lot of people, they're gonna do it just one day, and it's going to go 2-7 or something like that. And they're going to be like,
they're going to stop.
Yeah. Or they're going to say, you're an idiot. You don't know anything.
They're going to blame you. They're going to blame you. They're going to hit you up.
That's what I deal with. I deal with that daily, man. And that's the way it goes. And that's okay. But it just, at the same time, that's the problem, is that if I post like a bunch of picks and you pick and choose which ones you want, or you ask like what my favorite bet is, I don't know. Like they all feel good. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, so if you only pick and choose and then you lose both of those, but I ended up hitting the other 4 that I had put, and I finished 4-2 on the day, and you finish 0-2, you have no one to blame but yourself.
But yourself. If you came to me 2 days out of 2 weeks, them 2 days might just happen to be the days I lose on.
Yeah.
About the other 12 days, right? But the way I kind of got into sports gambling was in high school. It was my sophomore year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're supposed to be in class doing work. You know, I'm not doing no work. So me and my homeboy, his name Malik, we would just be online, looking at. This was when I was into the NFL. I used to be a huge NFL fan, like I'm an NBA fan. It was the only 2 sports I really watched, and I felt like I was a genius in both categories. So we looking at some fantasy lineups, trying to put some money into it. Same thing with DraftKings, trying to make us a lineup, putting us $1 into it every day. I never won no DraftKings lineup. I probably lost $300+ every year, every school year, off just doing that. You know what I'm saying? I'm just playing around with. And so high school over. I go to college for like 2 or 3 months. You know, it's not for me. So I get a job, and I'm working at this job for 12 hours a day. Like, and I'm doing this because I'm trying to build capital so I can go back in sports bet. And at high school, I never bet on NBA games or anything like that. I would always just do DraftKings lineup. Because that's all I really knew. I didn't know about Bovada, didn't know about Bet Online, didn't know about my bookie, didn't know about all the little sites that's out there, FanDuel, didn't know about none of that.
Well, so and they're also scary too. It's not to cut you off, but back when you were probably starting, a lot of people, they look at it and they think that they're like, because they're always pop-ups. Like you always go on like a random site, you know, maybe you're downloading something, or maybe you're looking at something you shouldn't be, you know, kind of thing. And all of a sudden an ad pops up for Bovada, and you're like, oh shit, click, like, you know, trying to close it because you think that it's like a virus or whatever. And then a lot of the time you find out that those sites are actually legit. So so now you learned that that those aren't so bad, and you probably started betting a little bit.
Yeah, so I found out about those sites. Like I said, I was working at a job for 12 hours a day just so I can build that capital. They weren't really paying me that much anyway, but I knew, okay, let me stick at this job for a little while so I know I can use this capital to do something that I really want to do. Whether it's a risk or not, let me go ahead and take this risk. And I feel like it was one of the best decisions I ever made because I still do it to this day, the sports gambling, and I ain't gonna never stop. And it was at a point in time, probably about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, people started to want to buy my picks. So I was selling them for $100 a week. You know, if you want picks for this week, $100, right? So that's kind of how I got started into sports gambling or whatever. And like I said, it's one of the best decisions I ever made, taking that risk, knowing I'm going to lose. You got to go in there with the right mindset. I'm going to lose. I have to be disciplined. Don't get greedy. What would you say is some other
I mean, the main things you just said there, there's variations of that pretty much for every rule, right? Like, just like, don't get greedy basically means like, if you see a money line dog that maybe looks too good to be true, it probably is. Like, you know what I mean? Like, or you see like there was another night where Miami playing the Clippers. Pretty much everybody in the Clippers got ruled out. Everybody. And it was like basically Lou Williams and Zubac playing against the Miami Heat. And everybody and their dog was on the Heat. And you even saw the line change as a result. And everybody was on it. And then the Clippers went outright at home. Like sometimes there's just some stuff like that you see. But that's kind of here or there. That's kind of case by case. I would say definitely bet what you can afford. Like, I think that's the main thing that people don't understand is that they don't really know what they can afford. Like, when you go in, if you go into a bet, like you just said, knowing you can lose, and you very well could lose.
No, it's not even can lose. I will lose at some point. It's not no. I will. If you going with the mindset of I'm trying to win every time, and then let's say somebody try to buy my pick, if they go in with the wrong mindset, if I lose on the first day or lose on the first couple of days, they done. Not knowing that I could possibly remake that money the next 2 days, or even have more profit than I lost the last 2 days. So those people don't be going in with the right mindset. Like you said, they want that $1 parlay to give them $1,000 a day. It's gonna rarely work like that. You'll be a person of luck if that happened to you. And I ain't gonna say it's not gonna happen again, but it's gonna be some time before you get that $1 parlay to hit for $1,000 again. Like, probably, it's probably
I agree. I agree with you, man. And honestly, like, again, I kind of, at this point, especially how far I'm into the industry now and whatever else, like, initially when I first started, people would post that stuff to me, like, you know what I mean? I'd probably be maybe a little more sensitive to it and be like, oh man, like, try to like talk them off the ledge, or, you know, say stuff that kind of, I don't know, you know, teach them or educate them. And at this point, it's like, look, there's new bettors every day, and it seems like everybody needs to learn the same rule. I'm just hoping that you learn those rules before you lose your house, kind of thing. Like, I'm hoping, like, you learn like stuff before you do that, because that's how you learn. Like, that's how I had to learn, like, why parlays don't work. Why, when I bet on touchdown scores, I don't only bet on guys that pay over plus 1,000, because again, just the probability of them hitting is so damn low that it's just, if that's the only thing that you bet on, you're basically banking on the fact that maybe you might hit the lottery today. And if that is the case, you might as well just go fucking play the lottery. You can make more money. Like, you can make, you know what I mean? Like, you know, they're not doing, sports books aren't doing $50 million jackpots every day, right? Like, you know, like, so if you're going to do that, and that's the mantra that you want to play, then you might as well just go play the lottery.
You muted yourself.
Geez, that's crazy. But Mr. G, let me ask you something. So let's say somebody like me who would want to be in your position one day, somebody who's working for a company like OddsShark, who has access to all the data, like you said, of things that happened since 1994. If I want to be somebody in your position, what would I need to, like, how would I get there? What would be the building blocks and things like that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the main thing that I would say is not everybody can go to journalism school. Like, that's the one thing that's probably the consistent with all the writers that work at OddsShark, is we all have a journalism background and went to school and college for journalism. However, that doesn't mean that you need to go to school for journalism to do what I do. One thing that you do need to do, though, is you need to write. Like, you need to try to, like, you create content right now, which is great, but not everybody's doing that. Everybody's thinking that they should get 10,000, 20,000 followers, whatever, just based on the fact that their picks are so good. And the reality is that there's over 1,000 people giving picks on the same NBA games across the board. One person taking this side, another person taking that side, player props, whatever. And it's hard to stand out from the crowd. So I think that's the main thing that I would say is, like, you got to be able to kind of look outside the box of, what does sports gambling Twitter want? What they want is they want stats that they can't find easily themselves. Anybody can just look up the standings. I can find out very quickly, or you can very quickly find out that the Jazz are 21-7-1 against the spread this year. But you know what people can't find out pretty quickly are, what's their ATS record when they are favored by 10 or more points? What's their ATS record when Donovan Mitchell doesn't play? What's their ATS, like, you know, these kinds of things that people probably don't necessarily think to look up, but are just looking for that quick piece of information. Like, you're sharing that stuff to your followers, people will see that and be like, oh, cool. Like, you know what I mean? This guy's a source of information, because that's a lot of the time what people are looking for from me is not only just the picks, but they're looking for info to be able to influence their bets. Because the one thing that I've learned about NBA and NFL, as much as I could have a track record of hitting tons of bets, doesn't matter. There are people out there who will say they know more than me. Or they know, and that's fine. Like, again, I'm not going to pretend like I know more than anybody else, but just the idea, like, anytime I'll post like analysis about an NBA game or an NBA stat or whatever else, somebody immediately will come in and tell me that they know more about basketball than I do, and whether or not that stat is important. So that's fine, you know. And so that's the one thing that you kind of have to deal with when you share those kinds of stats for people. And so the other thing too is just being able to create consumable content, like you're doing. If we don't do necessarily the long form video like we're doing now, even just like 5 minutes of being like, hey, I'm Harold. Here are my picks today. Here's kind of why I'm on so and so. I really want to talk to Jay here about Zach LaVine and Chris Paul, you know, kind of thing. And we could debate that, you know, and kind of thing, and then maybe make it 2 to 5 minutes kind of thing. And then somebody could be able to just sit there and watch it on their phone while they're on the bus going to work, or, you know what I mean? Or just waiting on an appointment or something like that. And they're just looking for a piece of content to be able to just digest, to take them away from the current BS that's happening around them. Right. You know, so I think that would be the biggest piece of advice is practice your writing, practice kind of like some video skills of just being able to present yourself. find some information that could be shared with people that isn't necessarily easy to find, but at the same time is understandable. So you could be like, okay, I can understand. Like if you start putting in like, oh, well, the Jazz are 15-5 when they're shooting 30% from behind the field, and Donovan Mitchell has a plus 20 PRE or something like that. Like just some random like advanced stat kind of thing. You're like, okay, like I get what you're saying, but at the same time, like that I don't know how I apply that to a bet kind of thing. Like, so I think that's the main thing that I would say is those kinds of things that I would touch on to be able to kind of get to a position where I'm at. And then the sad thing, the last point that I would make of how you get to where I am is you got to win. Twitter loves a winner. They love people when they hit bets. They love, like, basically, like I could go 0-7 one night, but then I go 7-0 the next night. I'll get 100 new followers just like that. Like, just because people will think that I'm going to go 7-0 the next night. And even though that's not the case at all. So, so the one thing that happened with me is outside of NBA and NFL, like just game to game betting, one of the things that I love betting on, it's my favorite prop to do, is NFL touchdown scores. That's basically my main thing of how I make money. And when I do that, I'll hit these big ones, like these, like Ryan Finley with the Bengals, his only game he ever started, but he was plus 1,200 to score a touchdown in the game against the Steelers, and he scores a touchdown, and people tailed me on it, and they're sending me their bet slips, so you're like, holy shit, man, I can't believe we hit this, blah blah blah, and and so people think, unfortunately, that I'm going to hit 1,200 plus 1,200 bets all the time, and that does not happen at all. Like the implied probability on a plus 1,200 bet is like less than 10%. Like, so, but because I've done well with it, or I, maybe I'm the loudest when it comes to it and post about it, people will think that I'm going to hit that all the time. Now, and that's the thing, is I will hit bets for people, but just like, you saying, like, I will lose a bet here or there, I am going to lose. Like, more often than not, when I'm betting stuff like that is plus 200, plus 300, or whatever else, like the implied probability on that stuff is super low, super low. So you have to take that into account when you tail my stuff.
I muted myself again. My bad.
It's all good, man. I kind of figured
that. And so I heard you say people just think that just because they post their pics, they're gonna get a lot of followers and things like that. And that was kind of my mindset, and it probably still is. But you just gave me a nugget. Post information that people don't have, or not people don't have.
People can't find it easily themselves.
Accessible. Yeah, for sure. So my question to you will be, unless I'm an OddsShark guy like you, any information I can find, they can find, right? Or no?
Well, not necessarily. Again, there's some sites out there that I would suggest, like you or Jay or even anybody who's watching, like you could check. Like you can go right to places like Killer Sports or Team Rankings, or these kinds of sites.
So we got Killer Sports.
Mm-hmm.
You got Team Rankings.
Yeah, and another one as well. It depends on the sport, but like for example, for NFL, for touchdown scores, there's a site called NFLSavant.com. Mm-hmm. So that site for me, it basically breaks down passing targets and red zone targets for every single player on the team. And you're able to see kind of where they rank, how they did week to week, whether or not that's increasing or decreasing. So you can kind of see the trends of offenses in the NFL. So like, for example, Davante Adams was the leading target getter, red zone target getter, but to bet him to score a touchdown in any game for the Packers, it's like minus 250. Never going to bet on a touchdown score at that cost. Never. But then you look down the list and you see a guy with the Vikings, Adam Thielen, pretty much neck and neck from a statistical standpoint. And then you look at his odds and he's plus 150 to score a touchdown. Who do you think I'm going to bet on to score a touchdown at that price, right? And that's stuff that's very easy to find. You just kind of have to look it up, right? Like, so the main things I would say is it depends on the sport. Like for NBA, the stuff that I use is very easy. Team rankings, and then stats.nba.com. That is probably, stats.nba.com is probably my Bible, like when it comes to basketball betting, because I lean more towards statistics than anything. Like if you're looking for just the betting record stuff though, like team rankings, of course at OddsShark, we have the database is available to you. You can go right to the NBA section at OddsShark, and you can look up kind of how the Utah Jazz are on the road as an underdog, and you can just find the records for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 games or whatever, right? So you could find that stuff fairly easily. But again, the main thing that I would say as well is the caveat with finding stuff that isn't readily available or readily accessible to people. You can't please everybody, and people are going to, it's subjective. People are going to be like, this stat's not relevant to me, blah, blah, like, and talk shit, and that's fine. But that's the main thing, is that it's not even necessarily always about stuff they can't find. It's about being a source of information, because that's kind of what people are now. That's how they consume content now, is they consume content just watching our video. They consume, like, nobody watches TV anymore. Like, people barely even, people too lazy just to even open up a web page you send them. You know what I mean? Like,
nobody watch First Take no more.
Yeah.
Nobody watch Undisputed. And this is somebody who used to watch that stuff religiously. I haven't turned on.
Yeah. I cut cable a while ago, and there's a reason for it. It's just I can't justify pay for cable anymore when I know that I could just pay for the NBA League Pass or Red Zone or whatever else, and that's all I'll do now, just to be able to just cut out the fat.
For sure. And my reason for stop watching shows like that, Undisputed, First Things First, nothing against them. I just feel like the majority of them don't really watch the games with the same lens that I'm watching the game with. Mm-hmm. So sometimes their points or their reasons for things, it feels like bland. Like, even though what they saying may be right technically, like, I'm going back to the Chris Paul and Levine thing, like how Jared and everybody else in our little group message said that Chris Paul impact is determined by the players around him. I mean, you're technically right with what you're saying, but you're not. That doesn't tell the full story. You know what I mean?
But I think it's the other thing too, is that those players that were spare parts on any other team are now, I don't want to say borderline all-stars, but are playing their best basketball, because they're put in positions where they have space now to take that shot. They're put in a pick and roll spot where they have to lean over to Chris Paul because he's going to shoot that three. So now that automatically puts the guy who's setting the screen to be able to have one-on-one coverage against a smaller guard and be able to just take him down to the block and post. And now all of a sudden his points per game goes up from 12 to 17. And trust me, when you're looking at a guy and you're looking at stats and you're looking at trying to define kind of who's a good player, whatever else, there's a big difference between 12 points a game and 17 points a game. And sometimes that's just a simple difference that Chris Paul will bring to a game for you.
For sure. And I also, so with all that being said, as far as putting out information that's not as easily accessible to the consumers and posting your winnings and things like that, what else would you say would be good marketing for somebody like myself? And you also said that you give out your picks as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's simple things that you can do. Like, you can hack the system and be able to build up your followers actually pretty easily.
I seen your pinned tweet, and I think I'm gonna start doing that, because you had those 6 bullet points.
Now, here's the one thing I'll tell you, Harold. Like, here's the thing. That is a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek joke tweet. Like, at the same time, I'm not telling people that you should do it. I'm just saying, if you want more followers, this is what you do. Because that's the thing. Like, so, because the thing is, the stigma in gambling Twitter, especially, like, you're okay because you actually have your face as the Abby on Twitter. What I'm saying is, a lot of time they'll just put up this like logo, like they'll just put the Phoenix Suns logo up, and it'll just be H picks or something like that, and then they'll just be like, I got max play of the year, max bomb, and there's so many damn emojis and everything, like it's just flashy, and I can't explain it. But gambling Twitter eats that shit up. They love it. I don't know why. And, I'll joke around and I'll do it every once in a while, being like, oh, boys, I got a max bomb whale, horse cock lock play kind of thing coming for you guys today, like kind of like just joking around. And then I'll be like, I'm on this team, money line or whatever else. And then people will kind of actually DM me and be like, are you genuinely betting that? Like, I don't know, like, because the people who don't know if it's a joke or not. But what's hilarious is I'll post that and I'll get like 40 new followers kind of thing, or I'll do like 500 likes, then I'll release my play kind of thing, and I'll get 500 likes within like an hour. Like, it doesn't matter what the play is. It's kind of funny. But then I'll post something about NBA underdogs, and I'll post something about how they've been killing it over the last 30 days, and it's crickets. Like, you get maybe like 20 likes, 30 likes, cool, a little engagement here or there or whatever. And it's like, guys, like, I'm showing you like legit info here you could use for your handicapping and your betting. And all you give a shit about is how many siren emojis I got in this tweet. Like, all right.
So you would say the way to go about it would be to trick the algorithm, basically.
Yeah,
like you said,
I mean,
your tweet, you had like little code words to use in your gambling tweets, so people can search. They're gonna search whatever those words were in your pin tweet in the search bar just on Twitter, and tweets like yours will come up.
it can happen, man. It can happen. No, I'm not saying that it's a tried and true system. I'm just saying that in my experience, I have gotten way more engagement on my tweets when I play the game, which is the game of trying to build your followers and trying to hype yourself up, because everybody loves a good hype man, especially when you're winning. And if you did this max lock, bomb lock thing or whatever else, and then you cash your bet, it's the greatest thing in the world. Like, people be like, man, you're the GOAT, like, you know, that kind of thing, like just off of one play, you know, like, whereas you have a history of track record of success, and people are like, oh, tough day, man, like, you know, kind of thing, like trying to, like, you know, just kind of be jerks or whatever else, right? So I think there is a way to do it. I think one thing that I would say is try to combine those strategies. I wouldn't go one way or the other. Like, I wouldn't only just post information, because then people will be like, okay, like, you know, the information's good, but at the same time, like, I can find this information elsewhere, or this information isn't relevant to me, or whatever else. Whereas if you kind of, gambling Twitter is such a fickle place, like, as far as it can be very toxic, but there are some good people there. But the majority of people that are on gambling Twitter are fairly new. You'll see a lot of accounts February 2021 start, you know what I mean? And it'll be a new account, and it'll be like, best gambling handicapper on Twitter, and your account has existed for 2 days. Like, you know, okay, like, you know, you're 1-0, that you probably are based on that 100% win percent. But at the same time, like, you know what I mean? Like, people aren't stupid. Like, they are for a little bit, but then they'll catch on. And if you're on the wrong side of that, people will tan your ass pretty quickly. Like, as far as they'll troll the shit out of you if you do that too much. So I think that's the main thing that I would say is try to combine both strategies. Try to find a way to brand yourself. Because one of the things that I do as well, you'll probably see this with my picks, is I'll say NBA underdog picks, February 22nd. And then I list my picks one by one with the odds. And then I'll put like a little note being like, I thought about this game, but didn't bother. And then what I do is, you'll see a lot of people, they'll say, tail or fade, let me know, or good luck, or, best of luck today, or whatever else. And whereas, because I'm French, I was like, okay, well, what's a way that I can use to stand out? So I just do bon chance at the end of all my picks, and that's helped to brand me. So that's another thing too, is trying to find ways to stand out. Is if you're going to do these kind of regular series tweets like that with picks, try to make it as clean as possible. So that way because people are just sitting there scrolling on their phone, right? Like, they don't really have time to try to read through all this bullshit, right? They just want to be able to see, okay, today's the day. Here are the picks. He wished me good luck. Perfect. Let's go.
For sure. Jerry, you got any questions for Mr. G before I ask him a couple of more of mine?
Have you ever like gambled in terms of soccer?
I mean, I do, but again, it really depends on. I'll put it to you this way: I don't gamble as much on soccer nearly like I do like NBA or NFL. A lot of the time when I'm betting on soccer is usually international tournaments or maybe Champs League stuff here or there. But I find because I'm not into it like the way that some of my buddies that I work with are, I'm literally walking in blind and just kind of looking at the odds more than I am who are the starting 11 and who's playing and how they're playing, who are they playing, like all that shit that comes into normally handicapping the game. So I would never feel confident enough to post a pick of soccer on Twitter. The only thing that I would usually do, and this is the one bet that I've actually done in the last 3 Champions League finals, and it's actually cash for me, is I always take both teams to score. Both teams to score is a prop that's usually at like plus 120, plus 140, depending on the matchup. I love betting plus money bets in general. And then I think another reason, like for Champs League final, for example, is both these teams are awesome. Like, you know what I mean? They have like the best players in the world. Like if they don't score, it would be a travesty. So I'm always trying to find like edges like that. But as far as like capping a game of being like, okay, I think Liverpool is going to win this game by 1.5 goals in 90 minutes. And I'm going to take over 2 yellow cards and all this shit. Like, no, I can't do that. Cause again, I just don't know enough about the game to properly do it where I can confidently say, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah. I appreciate it.
Jerry,
How
you got
about
any
you,
more
Jay?
questions?
You bet a lot of soccer yourself?
Nah, I'm trying to get into it. That's why I asked.
Yeah, I think the main thing that I would say, man, is try to kind of come into a new season. I think that would be the best bet, just so that way you could, because if you try to walk in mid-season and try to like, start betting on this shit, the odds makers have already gotten a pretty good idea of what these teams are, and you're going to get burned. Like I found people like soccer, I found to be just one of the more excruciating sports to have a learning habit with, because you learn by losing, unfortunately, with soccer.
Sure, with anything you learn by losing.
Yeah, that's true. You never win or lose, you just win and you learn.
Win and you learn. You win or you learn, for sure, for sure. So, Jerry, you got any more questions for him?
That's it for me, man. He's pretty straight through.
So, Mr. J, I got another question for you.
Yep.
Do you, with your experience, being in OddsSharks and things like that, and with you having an enormous access of data and things like that, would you say, okay, before you got into OddsSharks, did you think that sports were rigged?
NBA a little bit, NFL not so much, just because I felt like there was so many moving parts. Like I just, but then again, I mean, I'm a 80s baby, right? So I watched everything. Like I've basically been watching NBA like this since '99, pretty much since the Raptors actually started being half decent with Vince Carter.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I immediately point to is 2001, and even to a lesser extent 2002, with Tim Donaghy rigging the games and shit with the Kings and the Lakers in those Western Conference Finals. The same thing with the Bucks and the Sixers. The year that the Sixers went to the finals, like there was some stuff there, man. Like it was pretty obvious where it was like, okay, are we actually watching a basketball game here, or are we watching basically a foul fest to get these teams to the finals, right? So it made me think like, okay, this shit may not be rigged, but you could tell that the NBA almost like put in a call and was like, hey, can you make sure Chris Webber gets 3 fouls by half, kind of thing, or something like that, like, that kind of thing. So for me, I did think that a little bit, and then as I kind of started watching more and just kind of and then of course, like the Detroit Pistons winning the championship in 2004, that was immediately what kind of made me think, okay, I don't think the league would do this on purpose. And then of course, like, there's other things like the Raptors winning in 2019, like, you know what I mean? Like there's just little things like that where it's just like, if it was up to the league, they would have somebody better. Like here's the thing. If it was up to the league, Knicks would be the best team in the fucking NBA. Like it was up to the league. So because that's the biggest market, it's the team that when they're doing good, the NBA does good. And that team has been trashed since like 2000. So so that's the thing. Like I'm not trying to be bad, just mean to them, because like I want the Knicks to be good, but at the same time, I'll even tell you, I'm wearing a Knicks shirt. Surprisingly, I'm not even a Knicks fan. I just happen to be wearing a Knicks shirt right now. But the point is that there was a time, maybe in my youth, I did think that, and then as I've gotten older and I've seen kind of some more outcomes, some stuff that just kind of worked out, it's pretty difficult to pull it off. Whereas the NFL, I do think maybe there is some rigging when it comes to maybe some late flags and shit like that. Like when you're seeing like a team down 10 and they're driving and the spread is 3, for example, and then all of a sudden you see this defensive pass interference in the end zone or something, and you're like, okay, like, come on. Like that was not a push off or whatever flag you want to call. And all of a sudden that team scores a touchdown. They lose by 3. The book celebrates because now nobody wins, kind of thing. You know what I mean? So there were times that I thought that, but at the same time now, as I've gotten older, conspiracy theories kind of die down.
Jared, you think sports were rigged?
Not really. But like Gil was saying, it's some instances where you see like some fouls and stuff happen and you like really, like in real gameplay, like would you really have called this if if circumstances were different, or if at one night a spread could be happening, Bill might need that one extra point, you know what I'm saying, get him a foul, give him to the free throw line type vibe. But other than that, not really. I feel like everything, like Gil was saying, a lot of moving parts in a lot of sports, honestly. So to have control, like betting people to have control over the game, be kind of hard. It's too many variables in that.
Yeah, like that's the thing, Jay. Like I was saying, like spreads, I feel like can be rigged, the actual outcome of the game, like who wins or loses, I think that's too difficult. You couldn't pull that off, and it'd be too obvious. Like you would see it like immediately. Like whereas like when it's like a 10-point lead now shrunken down to a 3-point lead because of a questionable call there at the end, that's the stuff that I agree with you. Yeah, you could probably say there was some influence on that.
In facts.
So why would you say the spreads are kind of rigged? Like what would bring you to that conclusion?
I'm not going to go ahead and just say that that's what I think. I just think that there's some evidence to the contrary that while I could say it's not rigged, there's just a lot of evidence on the other side that could say that I'm wrong. So that's the only thing. Is that why do I think that? Well, it's just because at the end of the day, like money is powerful, and money will make people do some crazy shit. And if it means putting their reputation on the line for a couple extra grand or whatever else, like stuff like that could happen. But again, I it's too difficult to say. I don't want to paint any sport with the brush or whatever, or say that could happen. But I just think that there's some times where you're watching games, there's just some questionable calls at the end that sometimes make you really consider what's really going on. And that's it. That's probably the most that I'll expand on that.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Jared, what you
said,
saying?
like everybody on earth watching know that's like this should be called. Even like toddlers know like something's wrong with that. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on.
Same thing with the catch rule. Like the catch rule in the NFL, like we just don't know what a catch is now. And a lot of the time, like they'll use the analogy like if us three are in the bar and we all think it's a catch, it's probably a catch. You know what I mean? Like because we don't have like unless we're all, you know, a fan of a specific team, so we're biased and shit, maybe. But if everybody in the bar thinks it's a catch, it's probably a catch.
For sure. So I think, have I ever thought sports was rigged? No. And the way I look at it is I've played basketball, not at the NBA level, but man, you got guys like Curry, Lillard, Trae Young, even LeBron now from every now and then. They'll shoot a logo shot. Now, you can't tell me that, like, let's say if it was rigged, they told Curry, all right, in the third quarter, with 5 minutes left, you're going to take a logo shot and you're going to make it. Like, it's not like, how you know he going to make it? Like, even if he try his hardest, he'll miss.
Well, there's
like,
that, and then even just his pregame routine, Harold, man. Like, you watch his pregame routine, like, there's a video where he basically hit the corner three for 5 minutes straight. Like, it was like 200 makes kind of thing. It's like, you're going to rig that? Like, I mean, maybe there's like some, you know, some sort of optical illusion shit like that, like that you weren't seeing or whatever else. But at the end of the day, no, this guy is just that good, and you can't rig stuff like that.
For sure. So my last question for G is, how do you think the Vegas odds makers come up with a spread? Is there any type of data or information that they use? Is it like, do they look at the last 10 games and see opponent's field goal percentage, opponent's rebound, and opponent's number of assists, opponent's turnover ratio, things like that? Do they look at that to make the spreads?
Well, they do, but again, one of the things about sports books, and again, it's kind of like, I wish I had a legit answer for you here, but they got their own formulas. They got their own models of how they generate these types of spreads. And the last thing they're going to do is tell me or you how they do it. You know what I mean? So one of the things they will do, though, is that, or at least if we're in our position, what we can do to be able to kind of generate or garner some information based on how they came to these conclusions is kind of looking at like past matchups. So like one of the best examples is like when you look at like a game between the Jazz and the Clippers, like one night. So one night it's Clipper, or when they played that back-to-back set against each other, the Jazz were favored by 5 without Kawhi and PG. And the next game, Kawhi and PG are playing, and they're only favored by 4. And it's like, wait a minute. Here are 2 of probably the top 15 players in the NBA. The spread only adjusted by 1 point. Okay, wait a minute. Something's not adding up here. So that's kind of what I like to do sometimes. I like to look at previous matchups to see kind of what odds makers came to with the spread and what's that telling you. So you think that Utah is going to win by 2 possessions, or do you think that it's going to be a 2-possession game? And sometimes you kind of have to make that judgment call yourself, especially based on how the previous game went. And that's pretty much what you have to do in a sense. Like that's half the reason why, because a lot of these things and factors in play, why I just stopped betting spreads in general. Like I found spreads to be just kind of annoying. Like here for me, if I'm going to take a +5 underdog or a +6 underdog, if I think they're going to keep it within 6 points or 2 possessions, essentially, that means they could probably win the game. Why am I not just betting the money line? Like, you know what I mean? Or at least sprinkling on it, because that's the problem, is that if they're going to keep it within that, and if you genuinely believe that they're going to keep it within 6 points, either ditch the spread altogether and take the money line, or at least sprinkle on the money line, because the odds makers are telling you that this game is going to be a close game. Then you look at last night, you look at the Bucks and the Kings, they're playing each other. The spread, I believe, was 10.5. Yeah, that was the right spread. The Bucks won by like 20 points. Like, they kicked the crap out of them, like, kind of thing. But that's what you had to know, is that when it was a double-digit spread, that's probably what was going to happen. So, some people probably took the Kings and probably got burned on it. But, there's a reason for that, because it was probably a 4-possession game. So they're predicting that the final quarter is going to be decided by 4 possessions. I know I'm not going to say that the Kings don't have talent, but when you're playing against a team like the Bucks, to be able to overcome 4 possessions in the fourth quarter, it's just too tough. It's too hard to do. Like, they don't have the horses to be able to keep up with that kind of stuff. So a lot of the time, people are more kind of burned on that standpoint when they're trying to take underdogs in that for like money lines.
I like that last thing you said. I've never heard nobody use that term. You said, like you said, the Kings were 10.5-point underdogs against the Bucks. Then you said, when you look at the fourth quarter, are the Kings going to be able to overcome a 4-possession deficit? I've never ever looked at it like that. Ever.
It's how I do it all the time, man. Especially like 7 points to me is the key, or 6 points really, but 7 points is the key number for me in NBA, because that's a 2-possession game. No matter what, technically 8 points, because you could technically, I guess, have 2 3-pointers that are also fouled and also get the free throw. But again, I think 7 is probably 6.5 to 7 is probably the key number that I like to look at. And that's usually when I look at it, is like, okay, how close is this game? How close are the odds makers trying to do this? Because if you're down by 10 going into the fourth quarter, can you outscore this team by 10 in the fourth quarter? And so a lot of the time, what I like to do as well, especially if you're playing full game picks, and you can find this on stats.nba.com, team rankings, or whatever, is just look at a team's fourth quarter scoring and fourth quarter defense. Are they able to overcome it? Like, do they have the talent and ability, and have they shown the ability to be able to overcome fourth quarter deficits like that? So Sacramento has not. They have the worst defense in the league. They don't have as much talent as Milwaukee, for example. So it was a smart bet to not try to not betting on the Kings, even though I did. But I guess that's the one thing that I would try to say, is just kind of look at it that way. Is I look at it based on possessions than I do points, because for me, especially in today's NBA, not every game is like the Warriors, but if you are like a team like the Warriors, where you're a 3-point shooting team, 9-point deficit means nothing. Like, you know what I mean? You can get that back within a minute. Banking on that to happen is a little difficult, but if the odds are right, money line is more the play, in my opinion. So like last night, the Nets, like, if you're just using matchups as the specific reason why you bet on the Nets money line, all you have to do is just look